What's up everyone, I'm Tim and this is my channel 40 Times Around, where we talk about everything related to motorcycles, camping, travel, and adventure. And since the holidays are over, and I hope you guys all had an awesome holiday by the way, but since the holidays are over, this is kind of a good time of year to start thinking about saving money for your next big motorcycle trip. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Stick around. Okay, so like I said, today we're going to talk about some tips. We're actually going to talk about 5 tips that you can use to help you save money over the winter. Now that the holidays are over, we're kind of all getting out of that retail mode. It's a great time to start thinking about saving for your next trip. Now, Amanda from As the Magpie Flies did a video about this a few months ago. It's really good. You should check it out at the end of this video if you haven't seen it already. And she was pretty thorough, and she covered all the bases that would apply to anybody. So I'm going to try to be a little bit different here. I'm going to talk about the specific things that I've done to save money over the winter when I'm getting ready for my next big trip. Now, everybody's lifestyle is a little bit different. People make different amounts of money. They travel differently. So these tactics aren't necessarily going to apply to everybody. Some of them are a little bit extreme. I've gone pretty far in the name of saving money for a big motorcycle trip. So these won't necessarily apply to everybody, but maybe they'll give you some ideas or kind of motivate you, at least get you in the headspace of thinking about getting ready for this next big trip. You certainly don't want to wait till spring to start thinking about saving money for a big adventure. Okay, tip number 1. Now this is pretty obvious, but you have to make it a priority. You have to make this the most important thing. Now this is obviously going to depend on how hard you have to save money. For me, I wasn't making a ton of money over the last few years because I would leave jobs to go travel for a few months at a time. And so it's just kind of one of the downsides of this lifestyle of traveling so frequently. But I would have to make it a priority. And I mean, you know, it would come above everything. Eating out, I was eating ramen noodles most nights, peanut butter and jelly. This was, you know, a few years ago, getting ready for my first big trip. Pretty extreme stuff. You know, I wasn't spending any money at work. I was bringing coffee to work. I wasn't stopping for coffee on the way to spend $2-3 on a coffee. I would bring it with me in a mug. I would, you know, make dinner every night. I wasn't going out to eat. You just got to make it a priority. And the thing is that if this is your first big trip that you're thinking about saving for, this can be kind of a hard thing because you don't know exactly necessarily what you're saving for, but you maybe have this dream, this idea in your head, and you're kind of just going after it blindly, hoping that it's going to live up to what you have built up in your mind. And I can tell you from experience, and I think other guys on this channel that have traveled quite a bit on bikes will back me up on this one, it's totally worth it. And whatever you have to do to save the money and to make it happen, you're going to appreciate it down the road. So making it a priority, it seems obvious, but this is kind of the first step, is just that shift in mindset of, all right, this is the important thing. This is what's going to come above everything else financially, is this big trip that's going to potentially be life-changing and just amazing. I'm going to put that above everything else. Tip number 2 is to work more. Now, because we're after the holidays at this point, this is maybe something you should have started a little earlier in the winter, because there's a lot of great seasonal holiday work in retail and shipping and things like that. A lot of nice ways to pick up a few extra hours of work throughout the winter. Another thing I used to do, getting ready for my first big trip in particular, I was working 2 jobs at the time. One of them was overnight and one of them was during the day. And then I was actually doing snow removal too. Talk about making it a priority. I wasn't driving a plow, I was pushing a snowblower. In the middle of the blizzards and everything else that we were dealing with on Long Island, it was a pretty rough winter that year. And so we were doing commercial snow removal, which meant snow needed to be gone when the sun came up and businesses opened. So we would work straight through the night in the middle of a blizzard. I'm pushing a snowblower, you know, whiteout conditions. And don't get me wrong, for me, I love that kind of stuff because there's a huge sense of adventure in that. But you know, it wasn't easy work. But that, like I said, that's where my priorities were. So anything you can do to pick up a little extra cash. So it's not just about not spending, but earn a little bit extra if you can. You can even explore some passive income ideas. There's a lot of ways to make money online. Just a quick Google search will pull up a lot of results on different passive income ideas you can do and ways to make money online. Pretty much anything you can do though, make a little extra money, you'll appreciate it, and your future self will definitely thank you for it. Okay, tip number 3 is to plan. Now, I don't think you should overplan a trip, and I don't think that you should be so concerned with sticking to a plan. But what I'll do over the winter when I'm kind of even in Arizona, I'm limited on my riding. I can kind of only really ride in the valley or stick to the desert. I can't get up to the mountains. I'm not going up to Yellowstone this winter on my bike. I'm limited, I can only go so far. I'll spend a lot of my time planning, just researching. I'll even mock up an itinerary. Now, don't get me wrong, I won't use it because I've kind of learned over the years that it's nice to have a loose itinerary, but having a strict itinerary that you try to keep to, it's kind of just playing with fire. You're asking for trouble with that. But what I'll do is plan for the sake of staying motivated. And even if it's just Googling pictures of places you're going to go, or do a little research on what else is in the area, so that once you're there, you already know what you want to see. You don't want to be wasting time waking up at camp or a hotel figuring out, well, what do I want to do today? Or even worse, maybe having been somewhere that's now behind you and hearing from somebody, some other traveler telling you, hey, did you go and see this? And you didn't realize you had just missed this museum you would have really liked to see, or something like that. So it's going to help you stay motivated, but also once you're on the trip, you're going to be more well informed about it. I even put maps on my walls, anything I can just to stay focused on the trip. And stay motivated. So now this isn't directly saving you money, but it's about getting in and staying in that mindset of the trip is the priority. Tip number 4 is to stay broke. This is something I got really good at because I have a hard time saving money. What I mean by staying broke is keeping the money somewhere you don't have easy access to it. So what I would do is I would take, $20 or $40 cash for the week, and I would leave my debit card at home. Or maybe that doesn't work for you, but at least just don't be in the habit of using the debit card. Now every time you spend money, you're seeing it disappear. So, and you're also limiting, I only have this much for the week. It's not easy to just take the debit card out and, keep swiping, and the next thing you know, you spent $100 instead of $40. Another part of this too is definitely hiding the credit cards. And honestly, depending on how long you're going to be traveling, if you're traveling for, the summer, like a couple months, you're going to want to get rid of those credit card payments. Even though they're small, it's a real pain to be carrying around debt when you're trying to travel and have fun and all of that. You don't want to be thinking about credit card payments and that kind of thing. So, I would just kind of like hide my money from myself, or, I'd put it in my savings account that wasn't linked to my checking account. So limiting the amount of money you have access to at least forces you to think a little more before you spend that money. So that's tip number 4. Tip number 5 is to work in round numbers. This was a mental game I would play with myself that definitely helped me save some money. And that was to work in round numbers. In other words, if you're carrying around a $20 bill, it's a lot harder, or it can be, to break that 20 than it is to have a pocket full of 1s and 5s and 10s, where taking a couple bucks out for a coffee, you're not going to really think twice about that. It's a little easier, in my opinion, to spend from a handful of 1s than it is to break a 20. To take this a step further, in my savings account, I would work in round numbers. And once I hit certain goals, once I had whatever that number was, I had $500 in the savings account, I wasn't going backwards from 500. But if I have 525, I'm more likely to break that 25 and spend a little bit. And there's potential that spending could get a little carried away or anything, but more importantly, you just lost $25. Now, of course, this seems a little silly, because if you only have $25, shouldn't you save that? Well, yeah, you absolutely should. But just try as hard as you can to get to that next round number, and then don't go backwards from there. This is a nice little mental trick that I used to use when I was saving for a trip. Okay, bonus tip. This is to learn to travel cheaper. You'll get a lot more for your money this way. You'll be able to go a lot further for the same amount of money or less money, so you won't necessarily have to save as much. Now, this has actually been my latest technique, is figure out how to travel cheaper so that I don't have to sacrifice so much saving the money to go on my next big trip. My trips have gotten cheaper and cheaper. I took a 5-week trip around the United States, and I traveled 10,000 miles. My biggest expense was fuel. That whole trip cost me $1,800. The gas alone cost me a little over $1,000, which means that for 5 weeks I spent $800. That's not that much money. My trips have definitely gotten a lot cheaper. I know on my first big trip, I was gone for 2 months. I spent way more than that and didn't do nearly as much. So, wow, that is really beautiful. So that's my bonus tip, is just learn to travel cheaper. Anyways, I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell if you haven't already. That way you don't miss anything whenever I post something new about motorcycles, camping, travel, and adventure. So, question of the day. What is something you do to help yourself save money over the winter while you're kind of planning and getting ready for your next big adventure? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.